Okay, welcome everybody to the shared event that Agribusiness Yarra Valley and Yarra Ranges Landcare Network are presenting to you tonight. We'd really like to focus on the biodiversity that's in our backyards, in our home gardens, hobby farms, and even commercial production in the Yarra Valley. To do this, we need to know what we're looking for, we need to know how to identify it, and we need to know where to look for these amazing creatures in our backyards. So without any further ado, we're going to welcome Louis Mata, and he's going to share with us some of his experiences and expertise. And hopefully this is going to be a really cool learning experience for us all. And all of this is part of the Project Ag Resilience team that is being run from Agribusiness Yarra Valley, where we're trying to help food and fibre production in the Yarra Valley acknowledge the stresses of the current changes in our climate and still be productive and profitable. So to do that, we're going to need the support from the whole community, and that's why we're teaching the whole community tonight to look for these beneficial insects. So when we invite Louis to do his presentation, we're going to be able to ask questions as we go into the chat, and when Louis has a break, Corey will try and moderate some of those questions. So feel free to type away as you think about these questions that come up. And the other exciting part about tonight is that Louis has actually got a bit of an interactive experience for us to actually test your knowledge about these beneficial insects in our yards. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Louis know that he can start his screen. And we hope you enjoy this presentation as part of Project Ag Resilience. Thank you, Louis.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ron, for the introductions and for the invitation. Corey, likewise. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, sharing this passion for our environment and for beneficial insects. So as Ron mentioned, I would love to start with sharing with you the first part of the presentation is all going to be slides about beneficial insects. Some of them are not going to tell you what they are. This one, for example. So if you could please use the chat and start interacting with this slide, just write down whatever it makes you feel, or if you have knowledge about this or anything that you like to share. Just going to make sure that I can monitor the chat and then follow your not popping up. Chat. Sorry, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if anyone has already added comments to it. I quickly stopped, and now I'm going to redo it so I can have the chat open. Maybe that would work.
So some people are suggesting it looks like a bee or a furry bee.
Excellent. Yeah, good. We're definitely talking about a bee.
Michelle suspects a native bee, maybe a reed bee, or another little black bee that likes to nest in the soil. Is that
Beautiful.
close?
So yeah, I think that word for me, keyword native, is a word that I'm going to use today interchangeably with indigenous. And when I use indigenous today, like this is an indigenous bee, and same for the plants, I'll be referring specifically to Victoria and making it really clear that it's all absolutely 100% relevant to the Yarra Ranges today. So this could be an indigenous bee to the Yarra Ranges, for example. Well, Brun, since I can't see the chat, I would love if you could just relay it to me, and that way we have a little bit more interaction even.
No worries. Between Corey and I will get there.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, this is a group of bees that I refer to as sweat bees. I'll leave the more scientific information there between brackets if you're interested. And yeah, there's heaps, 10, 20, 30 species. They're all very similar, but they tend to be the ones that we tend to call native bees or indigenous bees. So obviously very pollinators, Here's another one. These are the leaf cutter bees. And yeah, they're relatively similar. And I wanted to show it to you just to get that sense of how sometimes we really have to fine tune our eyes to be able to distinguish some of these creatures, right? So this one has a slightly flatter abdomen, the other one was slightly more rounded. And yes, if we could observe their full behaviors at some stage, they will be cutting little pieces of leaves to take back to their nest. So while not they would not be a pest or would not create any kind of problems with your crops, they do have that peculiarity of being able to cut leaves. So again, amongst our most tremendous indigenous pollinators. Now I left this, there you go. So like now you have a moment to share in the chat. I guess, hopefully people have a lot of things to say about this one. And I'll wait for you a little bit to see what you have to say, and then I'll start commenting on it too.
I've heard these in my garden, and there's times when I can hear just a really low, deep buzzing sound, and it sounds like they're really slow.
Yeah, they do have a very peculiar sound. Oh, good. I got the chat going, so I can check that myself, Ron. Thank you. Um, Beautiful. So we have blue banded bees. Thank Michelle for that. Blue banded Marianne. Thanks. Blue banded bee on Godinia. Perfect. Beautiful. So I like that because, well, we're familiar with blue-banded bees. Perhaps we're not that familiar with the idea that they only have very few host plants that they're attracted to. Goodenia is one of them. Flax lilies is another one of them. I'll be sharing with you later on resources where we have found out exactly what indigenous plants attract blue-banded bees. So this is a very good example of if you wanted to see this in your gardens, in your farms, you would have to use very particular knowledge about what they're attracted to. So here we go, uh, blue-banded bees. And yeah, so there's two species in the Yarra Ranges. Maybe the Yarra Ranges is about to get, because of its size and its proximity to regional Victoria, maybe there's some of the rarer species of blue-banded bees, but there tend to be two species that are quite common. And so I'm going to move now into some of the most common butterflies. And again, just to highlight how what I want to show you today is that what we refer to as pollinators is, in a nutshell, three groups: bees, butterflies, and hoverflies. Okay? But we work with so many other insects that are attracted to flowers, and we call those flower visitors. They're also beneficial in the sense that they definitely have a good positive role in your garden, in your farm. None of them will be a detrimental and negative or a pest species, flower visitors, uh, but they're not quite pollinators in the sense of being able to do that pollination that you need for your crop or for your plants in your garden. So, but butterflies definitely do. And this is amongst, hopefully you've been seeing this. They're flying around at this time of the year. It's the very famous Australian painted lady. And later in the season, we'll start seeing browns. Yarra Ranges is one of the areas with very high densities of browns. There's different species. This particular one in the photo is the common brown. Um, and yeah, so interesting enough, they don't tend to, it's only rarely that you will see them on flowers actually, but they do go to flowers on occasion. So they still need that resource. But I think the resource, good point to make right now, is that it's also on the caterpillars of the butterflies that we can then contribute. And then I'll be highlighting some of the plants that would be beneficial, but for the caterpillar stage of the butterfly. So that's something to keep in mind, that providing for butterflies sometimes requires the thinking of providing for the caterpillars. All right, so another moment of interaction. I would love if you could share with me what you think we're seeing here, and maybe take it to the next level. Think, is it beneficial? Is it truly indigenous, or have you seen this before? I'd love to hear, kind of like learn from you.
What time of the season will we see these ones, Lewis?
Exactly. So they start with the season. They start with spring. As soon as the cold stops in winter, the rains come, the sun comes out, temperatures warm up. So they're out right now, and they will last all the way to autumn.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, they have a very extended season. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct for the plant. Thank you, Corey. That's exactly what the plant, the indigenous plant species is. So it's an example of a plant that will attract these type of butterflies. Excellent. Thank. I like the key point here, grass blue. So that's one of the points that I wanted to highlight. Thanks, Stephanie. And I'm waiting for Michelle, who's about to type something, and then I'll move on. I'm off. Oh, thanks, Corey. Well, okay, so I'll cover all of this at the same time. Oh, good point. Yeah, all right. Well, okay, 3 points here. So yeah, we're definitely talking about grass blues. Um, I'll move on the slide. We tend to lump these into blues because there's a wide range of species, especially in the Yarra Ranges. Again, that proximity with the national park, the more forested areas, and to regional Victoria means that the Yarra Ranges is unique in the diversity of blues and similar related species. But I think even if we are happy today to just be able to recognize this as a blue butterfly, it's really good. So definitely not a moth, but you're right. I think there's something to the way some moths fold their wings in a similar way and size. I can see that. I can see where you're coming from. And maybe I can then flip Michelle's question about that you don't see them that many anymore. Maybe that's a good thing. It's a good sign that today we can learn ways of bringing more of these things into our farms and gardens by attracting them with the right plants, both for the adult and the caterpillar stages. So that's something that we can definitely play a role in doing, all of us. All right, so a related group of butterflies is the skippers. And we have a similar story again. There's very, very similar looking species. Photographically, they might all look the same. To our eyes, when we're out in the field, in our gardens, they will look very similar. So we group them in this group of skippers. But yeah, again, there's a tremendous diversity of these butterflies in the region. So I'm just hoping today that we kind of get familiar with these if you weren't already. And so we have these groups of butterflies. So now obviously this is not a butterfly. I'm moving into the third group of pollinator insects. So yeah, if you could just share with me what we're seeing here. And there's something special about this photograph that is different. It's almost like I'm trying to, yeah, thanks, hoverfly. Oh, we'll come back to why this is not a wasp in a second. Um, but yeah, no, it's a hoverfly, so it's actually a fly that is mimicking, in many multiple ways, it's mimicking the patterns of bees. So some of these hoverflies in some areas will look tremendously like bees. Good, thanks. So yeah, wasps in any case, Marianne will have very long, I don't know if it shows, but I'm moving the hand of with the mouse. And these antennae here are quite short, like almost the same length as the head. In a wasp, these will be longer, much longer than the head. So that's the first place that I would go that would show that it's not a wasp. There are wasps that mimic hoverflies, so it could happen that you will have the same pattern everywhere else but in the antenna. So it's quite interesting. Now, if you look closely here, you will notice that this is an introduced forb, a capeweed, very common in our farms all across Victoria. A host for many, many pests. For example, the red-legged earth mite will be using this introduced forb. So I just want to like maybe provoke you a little bit on this thinking, right? Like I was doing surveys today, and this introduced forb was absolutely full of the sweat bees that I was showing you before. But at the same time, we know that in our farms it's hosting pests, and it's an introduced forb, so a weed. So what do we do about them? Are they helping? Are they negative? Are they positive? Yeah, so it's a really interesting debate of, and here they're obviously supporting our indigenous hoverflies. So it's kind of like an interesting thing. So here, hoverflies. And I just wanted to show you one particular hoverfly, a type of hoverfly that we call droneflies that maybe, I don't know, you're not that familiar with. And so, yeah, we have this thing that we call the indigenous dronefly. And as you can see, it's kind of similar to the other hoverflies, but in its way quite unique. It has this kind of pattern here in the thorax, which is quite going in the opposite direction that the one in the abdomen. And there's even a kind of like a spotchy pattern to the eyes. So I don't know if you've seen this species, but keep an eye out, look at them because it's sort of within hoverflies, a very distinct thing that we have here in Victoria. Okay, so these are the three groups of pollinators I was hoping to cover. Next comes a whole range of beneficial insects. I will go discuss them one by one. And also at the same time, I have on purpose showed them to you on flowers, most of them, so you can see that they're actually how flowers can be used to attract beneficial insects that are not necessarily pollinators. So keep that all in mind as we go through the slides and kind of think, well, ants, can I attract ants with flowers? Yes, absolutely, as you're seeing here. Our myrtaceae or gum trees and all related plants have this characteristic, very open flower that is basically a bowl of nectar. So if we provide this in our gardens, we'll be attracting things that are loving this food resource. So ants is a good example. And this is a crucial slide for me, the crux of potentially the whole beneficial section. Can we spend some time here, please, knowing and sharing? Hopefully all of you will be happy to share. What are we seeing here? Thanks for that, Michelle. Yeah, we're right on the plant, Viviana, absolutely, the sticky everlasting. I'll get to your question about the ants in a second. Anyone else? Have you seen this before at all or anything that remotely looks similar?
I've seen one around, and I think it's the green metallic tomato fly, but it's the green metallic tomato fly's got that bright, vivid green, but it's not a beneficial insect.
Yeah, no, this is not a fly. Thanks. Yeah, again, I can answer that quickly with that length for this tiny little insect, the length of the antenna would way too long for a fly. So a fly would have them really short. Barely you would be able to see them, distinguish them from the head. Whereas here you can see the antenna quite long in comparison. Yeah, good. Yeah, Marianne has the comment, it has long antenna. Really good. Okay, she's got a big tail. Okay, good. So the tail is, let's start there. This is a wasp, and wasps come in kind of like very distinct groups. The larger of the wasp groups, it's the one that we would associate with the word parasitoidism. And hopefully some of you would be very aware of how beneficial parasitism is. The way to deliver parasitoidism for a wasp, it's the females, by the way, so it's not happening in the male component of the species, and it's through what we technically call the stinger. So this is the same stinger that some ants have, some wasps have, some bees have that will actually sting you and deliver venom. But these groups do not have venom. What they have is that they have repurposed the stinger to lay eggs. And so what the wasp is actually trying to do here in this photo is to use the egg-laying stinger, to search and to probe for caterpillars, say of your apple pest, a moth, whatever pest might be hiding here, lurking in this flower. And the parasitoid is going to be looking and probing until it can lay eggs inside that caterpillar pest or hosts in your garden or your farm. So that's how beneficial these parasitoids are. They're capable of finding that pest, and they're capable of laying their own next generation, so multiple 10, 20, 30 eggs inside that one host. So in other words, your pest becomes 30 wasps. And that's tremendous, right? Because those 30 wasps then go and find another host and then 30 more wasps and so on, right? So like it's a one for many, beneficial kind of approach. So I think it's really important that we recognize parasitoid wasps. And I will share with you, there's hundreds of species, hundreds and hundreds, from all 1 millimeter up to like 8 millimeters, 12 millimeters. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Um, sorry. So yeah, parasitoid wasps, a big, big group, many, many, many species. And this is just a good example of a very, very large parasitoid wasp, very easy to see. And again, we can use very selected indigenous plants to attract it, to attract the female to collect resources which they need to then be able to do the parasitoidism. So it's a perfect balance between this female parasitoid wasps. She will be gaining energy from nectar, laying eggs, gaining energy from nectar, going laying eggs. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a female parasitoid starving without flowers to be able to do that function. So I think I love to make that connection for you, how beneficial it is to have those flowers around to help this. And you can see a very, very long stinger there, capable of probing deeper into other types of plants where these pests might be hiding and lurking. Yeah, so feel free to keep using the chat to pop up any comments about the slides. And again, you can use the Q&A to ask questions that then Corey will moderate later. All right, so let's move on into other groups. I might pick up the pace so we can then just kind of like move also into the more research component of the presentation and finish with citizen science and iNaturalist. So this is another big group, Heteropteran bugs, that has a very unique ecological role in the sense that many of the species are predators, so beneficial predators, but many of the species are also herbivores, and amongst them, some of the pests that you would be familiar with. So we're going to talk only about the predatory component of Heteropteran bugs. This is a good example, the orange assassin bug. And I know that it is quite common in the area ranges. And when we get to the citizen science component, it'll make sense how we know this information. So this long beak, so instead of using a stinger back in the bum, as parasitoid wasps do, this predatory species uses a sort of related structure, but in the mouthpiece. It's like a straw that comes right off the middle of the head, and it uses this to poke around and find sources of food. A similar species, the Pacific damsel bug, so in another related group called damsel bugs, tremendously beneficial. And again, they use flowers to ambush, to collect nectar, but also to, here's the beak kind of straw structure, to predate on species. And you probably all heard of shield bugs. Yes, there are some shield bugs that might become pests. Amongst, there is a group called the Asopini right here, and this is a very characteristic, very large, very strong predatory species, and it's quite attracted to wattles, as you can see in the photo. So like very frequently, if you look enough in a big patch of wattles at the right time of the year, you will find these predatory shield bugs predating there. So another good example of kind of like a connection between a plant and a predatory species that is not somehow mediated by some pest that must be around or some herbivore that might be around. And then, yeah, okay, another interactive moment and a few things to say about this again. So, yeah, exactly. So, Brian, thanks. Yeah, the brown marmoset stink bug is an example of a herbivore introduced pest species as opposed to this predatory species that we've been discussing. What are we seeing here? Excellent. Thank you. Well, while you use the chat, I'll answer Michelle's question. So the predatory assassin and shield bugs are beneficial because in your orchard type plantation, you will have pests or may be insects that have a chance to becoming overabundant, that not necessarily economic pests or pests that cross any threshold, but definitely things that you don't want to be nibbling on your produce and your plants and your food. And so these are generic predatory species. They will be able to consume those and preventing them from reaching economic or damage levels. And therefore, that's why we consider them beneficials or predatory beneficial species. Yeah, good one. I think I see how like this one is a kind of like elicits a lot of knowledge and understanding and previous experience. Now you've been seeing a thread here that I've been showing only indigenous species, not the introduced species, but I think that there's a chance that most of us would have potentially seen this and doubt, is this the introduced species that was likely brought here to Australia as a pest control measure and is likely to be sold and produced at the biological services, the companies that provide species, beneficial insects. But here I'm showing you the indigenous species. Excellent. All right. So yes, that's the very specifically the transverse ladybirds, not to be confused with the amber ladybug, which is the introduced species. And yeah, a tremendously predatory species, specialized on aphids and other. So the immature state, the juvenile, is also very voracious aphid eater. So it's a great example. She will be laying her eggs exactly where the pests are. So it's a really good example of a really good species because she's already, the mom, the female is already tracking the pest and she's laying the eggs for the next generation to have food right where your pests are. So yes, absolutely. So yeah, Michelle, yes, you can. You can buy the ladybugs, ladybirds, and I guess you will have that choice of using the introduced species or the indigenous species, depending on what's available. And you can release them in your garden, in your orchard, and then they do their own thing. They'll track the pests and lay their eggs, and hopefully you can then sustain a population. So it's a good idea. But you can also use plants and a whole range of indigenous plants to attract them. So you have those two options. All right, so we're going to move to beetles now. These now, as you can see in the photo, I wanted to do that on purpose now to really move away from flowers and kind of highlight the role of other elements in your farm and garden. So a lot of these ground beetles need really good leaf litter. They need that kind of healthy soil structure. They need bark, fallen logs. So I know that brings up the whole idea of the messiness of your garden, the messiness of your farm. But in that messiness, in that complexity of structure, comes all these benefits, including a whole range of carabid beetles. So really important to keep them in mind, predatory species. And in a related group, rove beetles that I'm sure some of you are familiar with, they're quite different. Like carabid beetles have this very typically rounded, heart-shaped, or sometimes symmetric, kind of rounded thorax here. So a very clear kind of thorax, different between the head and the abdomen. Whereas rove beetles tend to be nice and slender, and the thorax tends to be the same size as the abdomen and the head, and their wings are very, very short. This is a cool evolutionary quirk. They have spent so many millions of years living on the soil and hunting on the soil that they don't really need to fly anymore. So their wings have become short and they basically don't use them. So you can see the segments here is because there's no wings really there. So they won't be able to fly. All right, so this is now moving again into flies. I know that flies tend to kind of elicit all kinds of annoying feelings and so many pests too, right? So I guess my job here today is kind of flip the coin and show you some beneficial flies in the hopes that you will start recognizing them and start thinking, well, that's then a good one. That's not something that I have to, or maybe not create generalizations like, oh, all flies are bad, right? So I'm going to show you some examples and how beautiful it is that as dragonflies, which will finish this section of the presentation with dragonflies, they have that kind of similar perching ability, right? So these robber flies And these are tremendous predators. So like these are really, really good. They can hunt on the wing. They're very clever. I hope you can see in the photo, this is a spittlebug, so potentially a pest or a damaging plant species. The hidden here in the structure is spittlebug, and the hoverfly is actually just sorry, the robberfly is perching right there. So if the insect comes out, it will be eaten right straight away. So yeah, really, really cool species to have in our gardens, robberflies. And then this one is even potentially more confronting because it just looks like another fly. It just looks like your generic pest fly, right? But bristleflies in this family happen to be parasitoids, just like the wasps. So it's a convergence of function, and it just shows how complex ecology can be, right? So this group of flies with heaps of species in Victoria, very beautiful, some of them too, are actually in your garden parasitizing pests, potentially fly pests. So I know this is probably the most difficult slide I'll show you today because I know it just looks like one of those flies that you think, I don't want this anywhere around me, but it's tremendously beneficial. And there's a whole range of species. I showed you on purpose the one that looks just more like the common fly, but some of the other ones are more easy to recognize. All right, so we're going to move now into some like potentially less known groups. Lacewings, again, just like ladybirds, the juvenile and the adult are predatory species, generalists at that, so really good to have around. Some of them tend to have these really bright green, beautiful colorations. And this is the last interactive one. So last chance to kind of like share with me. And yeah, let's go crazy here. What are we seeing here? What do you know about this organism? Tell me anything and anything you would like to. So you can open this last interactive part. Is this what? And I think we have a praying mantis theme going on.
While we're waiting, Lewis, is that your photo? And how do you think it might have been captured?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that everything that I'll show you today, it's a photo that I've been taking. Some of them in the Yarra Ranges, some of them, all of them in Victoria. So I did make that really on purpose, so specific, so you could see like our Victorian species. Um, and yeah, I was hoping that most of them would be on flower or in their habitat. Some these, like the lacewing and this one before, these were attracted to a light sheet. And that's a very fun activity to do. It's just attract some of these insects to light and then just release them, let them go after. But yeah, so this that we have here, for some reason I can't scroll down to the chat at the moment, is it's not a praying mantis. It's
Ooh.
actually a lacewing, as I was showing you before, in a very specific group that has evolved the same raptorial, that's what we call it, structures that mantises have for hunting. So in a beautiful example of convergent evolution, we have predatory lacewings that look like praying mantises. And it's a very, very, very unique group to be able to see. And hopefully after today, if you ever see what we call a mantis lacewing, or a mantid fly, to make it even more confusing. It's not a fly, it's definitely a lacewing. So feel free to call them mantid lacewings if that's easier. But so on that note, of course, next slide I'm going to show you is the actual mantises. So you can see that that's the convergent evolution. So mantises, hopefully, that's something that, again, you can provide resources for, flower resources, plant resources, complexity of vegetation, and you will have mantises in your farms and gardens as well. And I'll finish this section with dragonflies and damselflies, because obviously they need water around to complete their life cycles. But what we have learned in the last, fairly recently is that they're capable of flying such long distances. And even when they leave the water, they spend most of their adult life more around flowers, more around shrubs, more around gardens and farms. Obviously, they're hunting on the wing. They could create enormous populations. So I might share with you the beautiful experience that I had of walking right through the middle of a grown canola paddock and seeing hundreds, thousands of this species that I'm showing you here, hunting around right at the right time of the canola stage where you really want your canola to be nice and healthy. And I believe it was what kept this canola yielding pretty good was in part the dragonflies that were around. So just keep it in mind as really, really interesting predatory species, beneficial insects that we could have around. Excellent. So I'm going to stop here for that kind of first third of the presentation. And thank you for all the interactions and all your comments. And I'm hoping that then Corey can have some, perhaps there is questions that haven't been covered yet.
Yeah, so if you've got any questions, chuck them in the Q&A function. We don't have anything yet, Lewis, but we do have a previous question from Bron asking about how ants are beneficial.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Oh, thanks, Ron, for the question. Yeah, well, so in multiple ways, I don't believe it's easy to disentangle the many functions that ants have. Like they tend to be one of those multifunctional kind of species, or taxa, ants in general. There's definitely predatory species, so that benefit becomes very clear, right? They can go out and hunt for pests, and they're generalist predators and strong predators at that. So all of the ant predatory species will be beneficial. And if we take that to a next level, most ants will be very good detritivores and scavengers, keeping things nice and tidy, providing and recycling nutrients back into the soil. So we haven't discussed that today. We're concentrating on predatory species, and so we're concentrating mostly on biological control, and that's great. But if we think more broadly about the whole system, then that's where the power of ants really comes into play. That capacity to kind of like make everything nice and tidy and cycle nutrients back in multiple ways back into the ecosystem.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
They give some larvae a lift up to the bushes too, don't they, with the elfin copper butterfly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then that's just even another next level of complexity, right? You have ants that contribute to life cycles of butterflies. You have ants that are crucial to kind of like keep aphid populations on track and like hoard them and almost farm them for the honeydew. So yeah, ants are very tremendous in that kind of capacity to do very complex things.
So we've got no other questions, but we do have one more from Bron about different colors of the damselfly and whether they're related. I think that's what you were referring to, Bron.
Yeah, I see yellow ones and orange ones and blue ones.
Yeah, nope. They're probably likely different species. Sometimes there is color variations between the female and the male in the same species, so that could be one of the things. But yeah, I think it's likely that if the patterns and the colorations are just sufficiently different enough, they will be from different species. Yeah, there's heaps of different species. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's carry on.
Excellent, thanks. So the next part, we'll probably stay here another 10 minutes or so. I might see how in depth I go into this, but importantly, what I want to kind of broadly answer is this question for you. What plants, is that what you're thinking now? What plants, what resources, what kind of habitats we could be providing for this beneficial insects? I'll be talking about quite in detail about research that my colleagues and I have been doing in this space for the last 10 years or 12 years. And I will show you some very recent findings. So like very fresh findings that I'm really happy and excited to share with you. I won't go into the slide set into much detail, but rest assured that you will be provided with the resources, the PDFs of all of these things, so you can go into more detail and then find that level of detail that will help you specifically in what you have in mind. This is potentially the most crucial one. Like this one, although it was only published a few years ago, it really started more like 10 years ago when I was challenged to think, a lot of people were asking me, what is the plant that we need to plant to attract insects? Is it indigenous? Is it native to Australia? Is it something introduced? And people were asking me, do you think it's a shrub or a tree, or what do we need to be planting? So we did quite an extensive research. This was conducted specifically in Melbourne. And what I want to show you here to the left is that kind of like initial question, the different colors, that basic question of the origin, right? Like, can it be introduced or can it be indigenous? This was our first main finding, that the largest amount of insects were supported by indigenous shrubs, even more so than indigenous trees. And in any case, combined better than Australian natives as opposed to Victorian indigenous, and certainly better than things that were not Australian. So that put us in a very exciting pathway of thinking, well, yeah, indigenous insects do prefer indigenous plants. And this is heaps of plants, like 80, 90 different plant species that we looked at. And so we then went and looked at more detail into what was a mid-story to unpack that story a little bit. That's what you see here to the right. And then you can see then that amongst those different components of the mid-story, so we have forbs and lilioids and tussock grasses and shrubs, that the very interesting story happens with the tussock grasses. And so I think that when we get our mind into historic times and we remember that a lot of our habitats were very dominant by grasses and grasslands and tussock grasses, it kind of makes sense that evolutionary, the majority of our insects are still connected with tussock grasses and then by shrubs. So that's the top winner. And if that was a question that you were interested in, if you had to plant something around where you live or you produce food, tussock grasses, indigenous tussock grasses are the top winners. And there's a specific plant species called Poa lab that we found in association with over 100 different indigenous insect species. So that is very tremendous. So I'll share this resource with you, and you can go to the table where you can see the 90 plants, and you can exactly see in which order they attract the largest amount of diversity, and that can help you inform your plant selection if this is something that you're interested in. But in a follow-up study, and this is more getting into the practice, right? And so I'll unpack this graph for you in a second. It's kind of like very complex and full of lines, but it's a simple story. Let me help you with it. I'll point you down to, I want you to imagine a garden, a green space that only has lawn and one gum tree. Okay, that's what we see in here in white. So if you follow the lines, when we did this research, we found that this lawn and this gum tree were connected with only 4 insect species. That's mind-boggling, right? Like 4 insect species is nothing. That was 1 ant, 1 wasp, and two herbivores. You can't have a system of almost 200 square meters with 4 species of insects. That just shows how bad this system was, right? And so what the council did in this case was plant these 10 or 12 or 11 indigenous plant species from that list that I showed you in the first study. So some of the winners from that study, including, tussock grasses like Themida, flax lilies like Dianella, Poa again. And within 3 years, this is how the system changed. So instead of interacting with 4 insect species, the new system was interacting with over 70 different insect species. So only after 3 years. And then related to what we have been discussing today, blue shows the predatory species and purple shows the parasitoid species. So, we go in only 3 years by planting 12 indigenous plants in a 200 square area. So that could be your garden, but imagine the power of this in a farm, right? from a system that only attracts one parasitoid, one predator, and two herbivores, so 4 species, to a system that attracts over 70 and with a very strong component of parasitoidism and predatory species, so a lot of pest control. Then orange, we can discuss this some other time. Orange is the species that recycle nutrients into the soil, so they're providing really good benefits for the soil. And in yellow, you have herbivorous species that are providing food for reptiles and birds and other things. And then obviously, yes, we have to think that amongst these herbivores, there's likely to be, in a farm, there would likely to be some pest species. So it's that balance always there, but it's a tremendous positive change. And we're really excited about these findings. So in this other study that we did, concentrating exclusively on pollinators, what I wanted to show you again is that we tracked all, now you're more familiar with this kind of like network plot. We tracked all of these indigenous species here. They're all shrubs or mid-story plants, so no trees. And what we did was associated it with, in this case, bees, but we have similar plots. When you read this resource, you can find it for butterflies and other pollinators. And a very strong component of the indigenous plants are providing for the sweat bees that we were discussing before, for our native bees, and for a whole range. And here's how I mentioned that blue banded bees are very specific. So that's the difference between a group of bees that is quite generic, goes to everything, whereas blue banded bees really just need their very selective host plants. And now the other thing that I can share with you here is that inevitably, and that's important to highlight, is that inevitably our indigenous plants also provide for things like the European honeybee, right? That's sort of goes without saying. We'll also be providing things for other beneficial insects that are just happen to be not indigenous. Okay, and then in a very, very recent, so this is currently in review, so very, very fresh off the press, another example where you already have a range. So in this case, say you don't want to change your garden, you just want to, or your farm, you want to add species to it. So that's what we did here. So we worked in a system that already had a range of species, plant species in it, that's orange. But these 6 in kind of like species that we know are good in attracting pollinators were added to the site. So this was roughly the size of a small farm or a large house. And again, what we find is that the tremendous difference that it makes by adding plants that are beneficial. In this case, only 6 different ones in small little patches of 50 square meters, I think. So something that is definitely potentially something that everyone and anyone could do in one season, right? Just plant these 6 plant species to complement what you already have in your farm and your garden, and then tremendous amount of ecological change that produce a whole range of species. And when you look closely at the plot, you will be able to find species that were only in the new plants. So the capacity to attract different things, it's very important. And again, always keep it in mind that you still be attracting your introduced species too. That's something that we find, it's inevitable, and it's part of how the system works. But it does show that the majority of connections, of interactions, happen with the indigenous species. And then this last one, I couldn't not help to show you, however briefly, because this is an entirely different discussion that hopefully will kind of like provoke you a little bit too. And this idea, the lawn is buzzing, again, really fresh research that we did here in Melbourne, is showing what the difference is between a high frequency mowing. This could be your farm, your garden, right? Mowed once per month. I don't know how that sounds to you, that whether that's very high or not even high enough. But high here means once per month, and low means twice per year. So you go from 12 times a year to only 2 times per year. You're saving petrol, you're saving in time, you're saving in all the infrastructure around it. Clearly, your grass will grow from 10 centimeters to about 40. That is the reality. So you'll have a longer grass, but look at how powerful the signal is when it comes to attracting the range of insects. And again, purple parasitoidism and blue predatory species, and orange the whole recycling nutrient kind of species. So anyway, a little thing to drop for you there that this is yet another way you can add indigenous plant species, but you could also start thinking about the benefits of just mowing less frequency. And you can be very creative about how you do that. You don't have to do all the lawn at the same time. You can do half, you can do a quarter, you can mix it up in a mosaic type approach. Anyway, so I left that there to kind of see what you think and be really happy to let me know. And again, I will share this for you so you can read it and have a more clear idea. So yeah, this is the second section. The last section is very brief. It's just to show you like our new very exciting iNaturalist project that you can be part of. But I might ask if there's any pressing questions before we move on.
I can probably help answer one of the questions, Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle has asked, is Australian fruit fly different to Queensland fruit fly? So whilst I don't know what Australian fruit fly is, I'm very certain it's different to Queensland fruit fly because that's my area of speciality. So for more information on Queensland fruit fly, people should head over to fruitflyfreeyv.com.au and see and learn all about the Queensland fruit fly and how it makes fruit go rotten. But I'm going to switch over to you, Lewis, to give us maybe an insight onto what the Australian fruit fly is.
I will have to, and I'd be very happy to research it. I'm not familiar with the Australian fruit fly, but I'm really happy to have a closer look at my sources and get back
It
to
was
you. Yeah.
in one of your graphs there.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
Second last wheel graph.
Oh, then I should definitely know. So let me go back to, is it here or here?
There it is. It's
Okay, right. So this
3
is
o'clock.
probably a terminology thing. No, it's not. It's not related to the Queensland fruit fly at all. This is not a pest. This is a flower visitor indigenous species that is actually tremendously beneficial in that it is potentially a pollinator, but most certainly a beautiful species that lives on flowers. So no, it's not related to the pest or to the Queensland fruit fly. Good.
Phew,
Yeah,
phew, thank you.
that's good. Now we're not proposing attracting anything that relates to the Queensland fruit fly. Actually, I had one in my garden just before. It's gonna take I just took a photo before starting to talk. I was out in my garden and I saw one of the not the same one that we had here, but one of the same fruit flies in the Taphridid group that are attracted to indigenous flowers. So yeah, it's very beautiful. All right, so I'll just bear with me another 3 minutes. I just want to share with you iNaturalist. So I hope we're all familiar with it. And if not, get in touch. I'm really happy to share anything and everything about iNaturalist. I'm an iNaturalist ambassador. And so I would love to share anything about it. I'm going to skip this slide because I just welcome you to go to iNaturalist and find out how powerful it is. This is fresh from last week. We have reached the point where we have documented in iNaturalist as a species. So humans, we have documented over 500,000 species, which is tremendous. And what I want to share in the minutes that I have left is that thanks to this collaboration that Corey and Bron have brought for you today and the project, the tremendous, exciting project, we have created this project in iNaturalist for you. So that's what it's called, Beneficial Insects of the Yarra Ranges. The link will be shared. If you're a iNaturalist user, you can just search it up or you can access it through the link. So yeah, this is fresh off the press, done this afternoon, the group. And yeah, one of the most exciting things is of those 500,000 species that we have seen documented in the world through iNaturalist, the beneficial component of insects in the Yarra Ranges is close to close to 625 species. So I think that's quite exciting. You can go to this project, you can scroll down. These are the top 5. And we mentioned all of them, right? We mentioned the brown butterflies, we mentioned dragonflies, we talked about hoverflies, we talked about ladybugs, and we talked about the Australian painted lady. I really invite you that you spend some time even after the talk. Just go to this website, go to this project, and scroll down and find out all these species, all these beneficial insects that exist and have been documented by people like you and I, like us, in iNaturalist. And another thing, if you're a little bit, want to do something fun, is you can go to the observers and then find out who has been making these observations. Maybe it's some of you, and in the future, if you get into iNaturalist. But I'll leave with the idea that if you are become an iNaturalist user, you can start taking photos of these species in your property, in your farm, in your garden, and they would be immediately uploaded here. And so you would be contributing new data, new information about beneficials that would be tremendous beneficial for you, but also for the whole community that is interested in having our beneficials in the Yarra Ranges. So I'll leave it here. Thank you so much for all the interactions, for bearing with me, and I'll leave you with this idea. Let's just bring them. Let's bring these beneficials into our gardens and our farms. It's doable, and it's very exciting, and you can actually use citizen science, document it, and share it with others. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Lewis. Do you have any questions, Corey?
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Lewis. That was fascinating. I don't have any questions here. Bronwyn asked who identifies an image that I upload. Well, if you're in the Yarra Ranges, that's usually Raina. No, but there's just the clever people who use the platform. You can do it yourself as well. We'll identify your uploads for you.
Oh. Well, I've just got a few slides to share just to explain how this fits into the bigger project. So if that's okay, Lewis, while people start thinking of questions and typing them into the chat, I'll switch over to my screen.
Yeah, are you happy to stop my sharing? It seems like I can't do it myself.
Give it a crack.
Yeah, there you
Should be
go.
able to see my screen now.
Good one.
So this is just to explain how Lewis's knowledge sharing with us tonight fits into our bigger project called Project Ag Resilience. It's happening in the Yarra Valley. It's part of the Australian Government and Melbourne Water project about being more climate resilient with our agriculture. So the first thing that we're trying to do is encourage farmers to have an environmental stewardship plan because they need to be ready to report this in the coming years as part of reporting ESG. So it's all about knowing how to measure things on your farm. In this case, measuring biodiversity on your farm or your area of production. And it goes a long way to being able to demonstrate that you're doing your production sustainably. So we also know that as part of climate resilience, we're going to need to broaden our insect range that's doing the work for us on the farm. So having really good IPM plans and promoting this kind of biodiversity in your backyard, your garden, your workplace, or anywhere in between is going to go a long way to strengthening that biodiversity and that productivity. I was trying to. Oh. So thank you very much for joining us. And if everyone has one more minute to do a quick survey, that would be absolutely fantastic. The importance of surveys is because the results from these surveys help us bring more funding and more of these expertise to the Yarra Valley. Without your feedback, we can't prove how valuable this resource is to the Yarra Valley. So we'd very much appreciate everyone jumping onto that link and answering those few short questions about what you've learned about tonight. This recording will be on both websites of the Yarra Ranges Landcare Network and at Agribusiness Yarra Valley. For anyone that wants further resources, this booklet here, it's called Common Pollinators in Victoria. It's got some absolutely fantastic pictures about the beneficial insects that you might see in your garden or your production system. You can actually get that from the Agribusiness Yarra Valley website or the Fruit Fly Free website. But even better, if you come to our next event that's partnering for this, you'll get one of these to take home. And we'll also have some of these magnifying glasses that you pop onto your phone. It's like this. And it allows you to take a really zoomed in close up of the pest or insect that's in your garden. So we will have all this available for you at our next event, which is a hands-on workshop up at the Karrawara Gardens. And we're also doing this in partnership with the Yarra Ranges Land Care Network. So that's me. I'm out. I'm done. I've hopefully Kylie can see your survey responses flooding in. And we would really love if you were to register and come and attend the workshop, which is going to be held in December. So I'll hand back over to Corey and Lewis for any more questions that want to come in.
No questions so far, Lewis. Just a whole suite of thank yous.
Lewis, are you ever over in the Yarra Valley?
Excuse me?
Are you ever over in the Yarra Valley doing any of your research?
I haven't had the pleasure to actually do research in the Yarra Valley, but yeah, I find myself frequently up there just to do bushwalking with the family, and I make heaps of binoculars observations. It's a beautiful place to be. Once I'll finish with this, I saw how the distribution of records for the Yarra Ranges was, and I got a little bit like, oh, there's areas there that it can't be that no one has ever been. So one day I took the family to very remote areas of the Yarra Ranges, finding and making first observations for specific locations. We had a great time. So it's a beautiful, beautiful area. Yeah.
While you're all here in the chat, does anyone have a garden that they would like to show off as part of extending that knowledge about biodiversity in our gardens that would maybe potentially be interested in being a future demo site for looking for these bugs? A skill set I think we need to build up in the Yarra Valley is learning how to go scouting and go how to look for these particular insects in our garden, and then potentially the commercial fruit growers are looking for people to be able to then go and do these surveys on their farms in the future when they've got to do their environmental reporting on the biodiversities of insects that's in their production systems. So I think we need to all be building up our skill set on how we go out and look for these and identify these and learn how to record them. Lewis, do you know anything about the Melbourne Museum collection that and how they're sharing information?
Yeah, they have a tremendous amount of resources and obviously an amazing physical reference collection of insects for Victoria. Or did you say the Melbourne Museum or the Australian Museum?
Let's say Melbourne Museum. Michelle's
Yeah, yeah.
contributed.
Oh, yeah, the Melbourne Museum, absolutely, yeah. And yeah, they have really good resources to identify species, and so I frequently find myself back at their website, kind of looking at things. So yeah, that's definitely a good place to find good information.
Awesome. Well, with no more questions coming in, we might close it up. If you do have any further questions, please reach out to the emails that you can see on the screen. Hopefully, we'll be able to go. You can reach myself or Kylie at qff@agribusiness-yarravalley.com or cab@agribusiness-yarravalley.com. We're happy to take those questions, and or people can reach out to Lewis and Corey if they have your email addresses. I think, Lewis, your email address was on your opening slide. So I'll
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
sharing mine and I'll let you put your opening slide up so that we've got your email address.
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the slide will be shared and my email is there. We're
Oh, great.
super happy to reach out. And then if you want to do it through iNaturalist, specifically about a photo or something that you would like identified, feel free to. So I'm really happy to
Yeah.
keep interacting with all of you. And yeah, and I'll just say thank you to everyone once again, to Ron, Corey, Kylie for organizing. It's been a
Uh,
pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thanks for setting up that iNaturalist project. I reckon that's our jewel in our crown.
Excellent.
And Kylie's popped that link for the registration for the workshop in the chat if you missed that. And yeah, as I said, you can reach out. All the information is on our websites. So I'm going to end the meeting now and hopefully it keeps the presenters in and we can debrief. Thanks everyone for coming. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.